Hello, some of you guys in the last video said, hey, can you show us on that 3-term how to get it to 4-term and complete that? So I will on this first one here, but make sure that you have watched the 4-term step 1, 4-term step 2. To convert 3-term to 4-term, again, play the x game. 2 times 5 is 10. Ignore that n squared. Now this is a positive 10, so we know both sides are the same. Since that's positive, they're both positive. What two factors of 10 would add to be 11? So we go 10, we've got 1 and 10, 2 and 5, oh, it's 1 and 10. So it doesn't matter which side is which, we just put in 1 and 10. It could be 10 and 1, however. Now we bring down our variable. Here's the 4-term. So we have 5n squared plus 1n plus 10n plus 2. Now to remind you how to do 4-term, cover up the back two and factor out what's common in the first two. Hopefully you said n is common. So we'd factor out an n, it would come to the front of the parenthesis. 5n is what's left when we reduce that, plus 1. Now you can double check that by distributing. n times 5n is 5n squared. n times 1 is 1n. Now take what's inside the parenthesis, copy paste it over here. 5n plus 1. Now drop this sign down. Ask yourself 5 times what gives you 10? 2. Make sure if you distribute it, you get that. So 2 times 1 is 2. Now you factor out what's common here. 5n plus 1, just like how you factored out what was common in those two, you're doing it again here. Now I marked those out when I factor it out, and I have n plus 2 left. Doesn't matter if you write the n plus 2 there or in front, but those are your two factors. If you were to FOIL or box that, you would end up with the 3-term. Okay, so now factor in this one. Oh my goodness. 6 alive. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. 6x squared minus 13x minus 8. Multiply, we get negative 48. We know we're going to be multiplying a positive and a negative because this is negative. That means that we'll be subtracting. So we take 48 and 1 is 47. 24 and 2 is 22. 16 and 3, there we go. 16 minus 3 is 13. I really do just count up 1, 2, 3, 4, and I just keep going until I get it. So the one that's farther from 0 will match that sign, so it's a negative 16x and a positive 3x. Old man glasses. Write them. 4-term, write it as the glasses show you, each circle in that order. Whoops, that was a negative 16x, negative 8. Looking at those two only, what's common? Hopefully you're saying that would be 2x. It's the largest amount that can come out. So we'd write 2x in front of the parentheses, and this would reduce. 2 would go into 6 3 times. X into x squared, 1x. 2 goes into 16, negative 8, the x's cancel. Now we copy paste 3x minus 8, drop this sign, what times 3x is 3x? 1. Now we take these two out, 3x minus 8, factor those out, we have 2x plus 1 left. There is no shortcut that you can do on this one. Last film I told you there was some shortcut you could do. Now we're going to solve by factoring. In solving by factoring, what we do is we set it to 0. Okay? Because we're going to use the product property. So we want to get rid of things on this side. How do we wipe away a positive x? By bringing in a 0 pair or a negative x. We want to line that up with that one. How do we get rid of the the positive 6 by subtracting 6. We need to leave some space for that, so we'll do it on this move. 7x squared, 20x minus 1 is 19x. Now we're going to subtract 6 from this side. That wipes everything out over there. We have 0. Minus 6 over here. Okay, negative 6 times positive 7, negative 42. We have a negative here, so we know that there'll be a negative and a positive. We know that means that we're subtracting them. 1 and 42 would be 41. 2 and 21 would be 19. So we know it's 2 and 21. 21 being farther from 0 matches that sign. So we have 21x, 2x. Now, old man glasses. Make sure you go for this third term and not the 0. We get 7x squared minus 2x plus 21x minus 6 equals 0. Looking at the first two terms, the only thing common is an x. So we factor that out. We get x times 7 minus 2. Whoops, should be 7x. We should never end up with like terms in there. I just forgot an x. Repeat this. 7x minus 2. What times 7x will give us 21 plus 3. It's still equal to 0. So now, we say 7x is common, so we go 7x minus 2. Wipe that out there. We have x plus 3 equals 0. Now we need to set each of these to 0. 7x minus 2 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0. Draw your line, add 2 to each side. 7x equals 2, divide by 7 on each side. X equals 2 sevenths. Subtract 3 on each side. X equals negative 3. Okay? So get that down in your notes. Ask questions. Pause the video. I'm going to erase this real quick. Give room for the next problem. Okay, another one. Solve by factoring. This one's nice. It's already been brought across to 0. So all we need to do, draw our x game. Negative 6 times 12 is negative 72. That tells me it's going to be a positive and a negative, and we're subtracting again. Okay, so 72. 72 and 1 would be 71. 2 and 36 would be 34. 3 and 24 would be 21. 4 and 18 would be 14. 5 won't go in there. 6 and 12 will be 6. So the one farther from 0 will match that. So it's 12 and 6. Bring down that variable, x. We rewrite 12x squared minus 6x plus 12x minus 6 equals 0. Factor out of those two. We can factor out a 6x. That will equal 6x times 2x minus 1. Put our 2x minus 1 over here. And we can factor out a 6. No, x, sorry, equals 0. So we have 6x plus 6. That's what's left. And 2x minus 1. We need to set each to 0. 6x plus 6 equals 0. Subtract 6 from each side. So we get 6x equals negative 6. Divide 6 into each of these. X equals negative 1. 2x minus 1 equals 0. 2x equals 1. X equals 1/2. Okay? So x equals 1/2, x equals negative 1. Please come with questions if I'm losing you. Specific questions where you're getting lost. Okay, now in this one, there's a couple things you could do. You could solve it by factoring because you know that's a difference of two squares. And from our previous lesson, a difference of two squares, you know, is factored down as a negative and a positive. Square root of 4x squared is 2x. Square root, in the front of both, square root of the 25 is 5, and 5. And then you could set each to 0. So 2x plus 5 equals 0. Draw your line, subtract 5, subtract 5. 2x equals negative 5. Divide by 2. X equals negative 5/2. The other answer, 2x minus 5 equals 0. Add 5 to each side, so we get 2x equals 5. Divide by 2 on each side. X equals 5/2. So that's one way you could solve it. Here's another way. 4x squared minus 25 equals 0. Circle your creepy dude. Go up your PIMDAs, like you were taught in Algebra 101. What's being added or subtracted to the creepy dude? 25. It's being subtracted, that tells you to add. So you add 25 to each side of this equals. That will be 4x squared equals 25. Because that cancels. Now, we're done with add, subtract. We're up at multiply, divide. What's being multiplied? The 4. So we divide by 4. X squared equals 25 over 4. Now we need to get the x squared alone, so we square root that. Square root that. When we do this side, we put a plus or minus. So now we have x equals plus or minus square root 25 over square root 4. Reduce those. The square root of 25 is 5, plus or minus 5 over square root of 4 is 2. Here's one more. It's really nice to do, following up your PIMDAs. We can't add or subtract because it's inside the parentheses and parentheses at the top. So we can't multiply. There's nothing outside there to multiply. We're looking on this side. So the first thing we can do is get rid of the exponent. Getting rid of the squared is by square rooting, plus or minus. So now we have x plus 5, because that gets rid of that. Equals, what's the square root of 36? I hope you said 6. Don't forget it's a plus or minus. So at this point, we need to write it into two equations. X plus 5 equals negative 6, or x plus 5 equals positive 6. Subtract 5 from each side. That cancels. We get x equals negative 11. Subtract 5 from each side. That cancels. We get x equals 1. Okay. Just a variety of problems here. This one, there is no number, so we just have to factor 2 terms. It's super easy that way. What will go into both of these? Hope you're saying 3x. So we pull 3x out to the front. Times, reduce that, it would be x. Reduce that, it would be 3. You can double check. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 3 is 9x equals 0. Now set each of these to 0. 3x equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0. Divide by 3, we get x equals 0. Subtract 3, we get x equals negative 3. So in both those situations, that would equal 0. You can plug it in and try it. Last thing, we have a real life situation. Somebody's going to dive off of a diving board. He's going to go with an upward velocity of 14 meters per second. He's on a board 3 feet from the water, and we want to know how many seconds till he hits. Here's the equation that'll fit it. And you always want to read what each of the letters means. V is our upward velocity. That would be a speed, which is 14. So we plug 14 in for V. Time is what we're looking for. That's how many seconds. The initial height was 3 feet, and that's HO right here. Now, we're looking for when he hits the water. That would be his height after the time, which will be 0, because that's at the level of the water. So now we do it just like we've been doing these. However, never do an X game with a negative off the front. Instead, we need to divide everything by negative to get rid of that negative off the front. Remember when you were factoring, I said never leave a negative on the front. 0 divided by negative 1 is 0. Negative 5 divided by negative 1 is 5. Negative 1 into 14 would be a negative 14, t. Well, negative 1 into 3 is negative 3. Now we can play the X game. Negative 15 needs to add to be negative 14, so that would be negative 15 and positive 1. Bring a t in. Now you do your old man glasses. I'm going to write it off to the side here. 5t squared minus 15t plus 1t minus 3. Factor out what's common. 5t, 5t. So we write that to the front. 5t, parentheses, reduce t minus 3. Copy paste this. T minus 3, and it takes nothing, it takes 1 times t to get 1t, so we put a plus 1. Factor out our t minus 3, and our 5t plus 1. Now don't forget this was all equal to 0, so now we bring in the zero product property. And we would say t minus 3 equals 0. So t equals 3. 5t plus 1 equals 0. We'd subtract 1 from each side. We'd have 5t equals negative 1. T equals negative 1/5. Which of those is a reasonable time? Can we have a negative time? No. We can only have a positive time. So it takes him 3 seconds jumping with that velocity to come down into the water. Have a good day. We'll see you in class. Bring your questions.